Welcome to the Social Impact Level Up podcast. This is where we blur the lines between business, nonprofit, and impact. Social entrepreneurs in our community share their stories of how they are changing the world and building a legacy of health, wealth, happiness, and wellness. I'm your host, Wendy V, along with my co-host, Rodrigo Bravo. Together, we're social entrepreneurs building a collective of impactful humans who are going to make this world a better place. We hope you'll join us. Here's today's episode. Low energy days can be a bust if you have them, if you let them. But if you choose to turn your energy around and use it for good, you can still overcome and master low energy days. Take a listen to today's episode where we talk all about what to do when you're feeling just a little bit blue. So today's topic is making progress on low energy days. So I'm just getting ready to start the room and share. But do you want to talk about, have you even had any low energy days? I feel like you usually have a lot of energy. I don't know if you have low energy days.
I mean, I think everybody does have low energy days. I have them myself. It's just a matter of kind of thinking like, what am I going to do about it? Is it do I have low energy because I need to recharge? Do I have low energy because there is something that is going on that's affecting my my mood, the way I look at things? So it really depends on first focusing on the origin of it, and then seeing if you got to do something about that, or if there's anything to do about it. There's times when you're in the middle of something and you realize that, yeah, okay, I got a low energy day. I don't feel like doing this, doing that. We actually had a discussion about this earlier in another place that we were talking. I want to welcome Alejandra and Kathy to the room, where we were talking about what do you do when you don't have that motivation. And a lot of times when you don't have that motivation, it's kind of parallel to having low energy, right? And one of the things that I talked about was that's when discipline kicks in. And when I do have low energy days, I really do rely on my discipline. What does that mean? That means that I gotta really push through it sometimes. Now again, establishing the origin of your low energy or for why you're feeling that way, this and that, is really critical, right? Because if you don't, then you don't know how to really address that low energy day. If for example, you're having a low energy day because you're just tired. Okay. That means you had a long weekend, you're working on a project, it's now Wednesday, you're chugging along, and you're having a real low energy day. At least okay, look, well, I'm having a tough weekend. How do I replenish that? Maybe I need to get up early and go work out. Maybe I need to take the day off. Maybe I need to just relax, whatever the case may be. When you identify the cause for it, that's what really helps you find the best tool to resolve it. Because if we go around trying to fix something without knowing what the origin is, well, we're going to end up messing things up. We're going to end up actually finding solutions to problems that we don't currently have. So, for example, in that case, I might just take a day off. I might just say, you know what? Today's a low energy day. Today, I'm not really feeling it. I have the capacity to absorb a day off. I'm going to go ahead and self care myself, take care of myself, so that tomorrow I have good energy. I have high energy. If it's another reason, you might, let's just say you went through a bad breakup, right? Okay, you need to kind of replenish that, right? Okay, I got a low energy because I don't know, XYZ happened and reminding me of something. Again, okay, I identified what the issue is. I now know why I'm feeling low about it. What can I do to resolve that? It might mean, hey, treating myself. Hey, you know what? I am worth it. I am a worthy person. I'm gonna treat myself to XYZ. Or hey, you know what? I haven't gone out with my friends. You know what I'm saying? I was, busy with this thing. I'm gonna go ahead and go out with my friends, have a good time, and remind myself of why I am a good person and good company and XYZ. So I think the first thing to do is when you do have a low energy day, and I do have them, is identify what it is and then resolve it. See if you can resolve it, and if it just takes a simple solution, or it might take a longer solution. Because at the end of the day, we really do need to recognize that and take care of ourselves. There's only one of us. Nothing can happen without us, and if we don't take care of us, if we're not there, then nothing's going to happen. And I think that's why it's so important to make sure that we figure it out and that we take care of ourselves and resolve that. Because and I think you know this, Wendy. We've powered through days, right? We've powered through days when we have low energy, and that's fine. You can do that. But man, it sucks when you're just powering through and then all of a sudden you just collapse. You're like, oh man, I can't do this anymore. So yeah.
Well, it's good to hear you're human. I'm glad. I definitely have low energy days, which is what made me think of this when I was trying to create topics. I was like, you know what? There's so many days where I don't know if I'm struggling to get motivated, but I think that that is one aspect of it is motivation. And I think the other aspect is that the did I rest? Did I replenish myself? Sometimes I don't do that. And I think you're right. We just power through. We keep going. Cynthia, who's in the room, is very notorious for just powering through all-nighters to get some of her work done. And I think that sometimes I am tempted to take that route because I just want to feel like, okay, I've gotten past whatever imaginary goal I created for myself in my head. But then I realized that I need the sleep, I need the rest, and it's going to be more beneficial for me to rest and then come back to the task. And I have to like reframe then, well, where am I going to take that time or when am I going to put the energy in? Because on today I'm choosing to not put the energy in. And that might mean I'm going to sleep, or like you said, I'm going to go take a vacation or go hang out with friends or do something else that's restorative. And when I'm doing the restorative thing, I also don't want to feel guilty. And there was another conversation on Clubhouse like a couple of days ago about feeling guilty when you take time off. And I think that that is the important part of it. Even if you are choosing to say, okay, I have lower energy today, I want to do something that's more beneficial for me as a person rather than for my business. And I don't want to feel bad about that. And I want to be able to put my energy in a place that's going to create more energy for myself versus depleting it. And I think that that's where I have to do more work on understanding how to talk to myself and allow myself to take the time off.
Oh, I like that, Wendy. I like that because we do, especially folks, oh my God, BIPOC individuals, right? People that are from communities that are historically disadvantaged, or black and brown communities. Man, we feel like we got to keep going on to keep up. It's like you cannot stop. If you stop, somebody else is going to take it, and we're constantly under this pressure that we have a burden to take on, right? And for me, for example, I know my parents, I'm saying, they're fine. My family, they're fine. But I know that at the end of the day, if something's needed, they are going to come to me. And so I feel like a pressure. There's always been a pressure, like I gotta do this, I gotta do that, I gotta persevere, I gotta keep going. And particularly back when I was working in corporate still, I mean, I had this relentless pursuit to work, and and the thing is, I was good at it, so when you're good at something and it's work, and you don't feel like it's that much pressure, right? You're like, hey man, I'm good at this, this is what I was, XYZ. But there comes a time when it all just comes together, and it is just way too much tension, and you try to push through it, and you try to, you pretty much burden yourself with it. And so the whole point for bringing all that up for me is, that you don't even realize some of the pressure that you put on yourself, and it really compounds when you do have an off day, when you have a day where you have a kind of a low ambition, low energy, low capacity to take on things. And it sucks because then what do we end up doing? We end up judging ourselves. What did I do wrong? Why don't I have it today? I didn't do anything differently. Oh my God, I must have messed up. Man, I should be stronger. I need to do this and that. And it's just a kind of a cascading series of feelings and emotions that you get. So if we don't take the time to take care of ourselves first, which means, what, even when you're doing really well, there comes a point where you got to take a break. Just take a break. You get done with a big project, you finally reach some milestone. A lot of times I would just go to the next one. Let's go. Now, if I get when I get a client and I do like something really badass, I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, man, I'm celebrating. I'm taking, this afternoon off. And I go out there and I cherish that victory. I recharge myself. I say, okay, I did well. I expended some emotional capital. I helped these folks with a solution, and I feel good about it. And I take the time off, whatever time it is. I just came back from a 1 week vacation, right? And it felt fantastic. And yesterday, yes, I was slammed with emails. I was going through it, but I felt charged up. I felt particularly ready to go. And I feel that vacation, that time to just kind of have a good time, relax, cherish my time and whatnot, really helped me go through and make sure that these next, days, weeks, or whatever are filled with high energy days because I took the time to take a recharge.
I want to go all the way back to something you said earlier about people of color having, I'm sorry, I was just choking on water. I drank water and then decided to choke myself. So, all the way back to people of color having more ambition because of the things that they've had to kind of reach for, climb for, whatever, and really feeling like you have to keep going and keep going and keep going. Because I think that that's something important that we forget is how do you then allow yourself to not take the hard road where you're continuing to go fast and do things at a slower pace or do things as your instinct tells you. And if your instinct tells you to take time off, how do you follow that instinct rather than pushing yourself in, the capacity that you have and not really getting anywhere? And I think that that was what I was doing when I was in quote unquote corporate America, aka the government, was pushing myself really hard, but not really getting anywhere and feeling like I had to continually expend more energy to just try to stay in the spot that I was in or to remain sort of at the status that I had somehow achieved, but without getting any gratification from it, without getting any support to advance, without feeling like anybody was noticed if I had low energy or was not motivated and cared enough to ask me about it or do anything about it. And so sometimes I would find that I'd be in these spaces where I would be the only person of color having this conversation about, oh, I think, I need a mental health day or whatever. And you feel like there's judgment there or there's some sort of look at you as inferior because you're choosing to not show up 110% that one particular day when you've done it every other day. So I think that there's some stigma, and some of that is internal work that we all have to do to understand, well, why are we feeling this way and what situations make you feel this way and how do you not be in those situations. But then there's also just this sense, I think, in the culture of our society about always having to present as if you're at your maximum or always having to be at your maximum and in spaces that you aren't naturally the kind of owner of or you're not empowered in. You have to show up in a way that is not low energy, that really is kind of over the top or really present, and you can't just kind of show up. Sometimes I look around the room and there's people there who just sort of show up and they just kind of sit, and I'm like, oh, that's an option? Like, I didn't even know this was an option to just come and be like a wallflower in this situation, to not have an opinion, to not contribute to the conversation, to not give an idea, to not share something vocally in the conversation. I really didn't understand that was an option for a really long time because I would be the only person of color in those spaces. So I always felt like no matter what, people were looking at me. And if I didn't have the energy that day to be vocal or to speak up or to represent or do whatever it was I was doing, then I always felt like I wasn't using that opportunity wisely as the only person of color in that room. And that was the conversation I always had to have with myself, is like, well, then did you just tokenize yourself? Like, did you just make it so that you were the problem where you can't actually come as you really want to come that day because you've decided that you're, now having to represent all these people who are not also in this conversation. So it was a really interesting, I think, a bit of internal work that I had to do around allowing myself to come to spaces as I was feeling that day. So if I didn't feel like talking or I didn't feel like, shaking 50 hands or whatever it was, that was okay. And if people noticed, just said, hey, something's wrong, blah, 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 that you wouldn't, like, I wouldn't take offense to it because they think I'm supposed to be a certain way. I didn't show up that way, and that's their expectation. But their expectation isn't really my concern. My concern is how I feel. And so it was a lot of just going back and forth with myself in these conversations or in these spaces that I would have to show up in. to know that it was absolutely okay for me to come to the conversation authentically, and that my energy could wane one day and it could be really over the top another day. And both of those are me, and both of those are me being present, and that it doesn't have to be the way that people expect me to show up.
Yeah, I like what you said there. I mean, that is spot on. Where your concern is not their expectations, but how you feel. And I think a lot of times, especially folks that are in a corporate environment or an environment where we're typically maybe not present, um, I think it's really important to stay true to that, because we do fall into that. I definitely fell into that when I was in the corporate world, where I met those expectations, and I felt like I needed to meet those expectations, regardless of what I was feeling that day, regardless of what was going on in my home, regardless of what tragedy was striking my kids, whatever it may be. It didn't really matter. What mattered is that I showed up the way they wanted me to show up. And it wasn't until I actually had a moment in a trip, in a vacation in New York with my son, my youngest, and my boss at the time. Well, actually not my boss, but my VP at the time. He sent me a text message in the middle of my vacation, and he told me, "Hey, you didn't turn in this report. Let's talk about it when you get back." And of course, I read it. I was like, "Oh fuck!" Right? My anxiety went up, but my son immediately noticed it, and he looked at me. He goes, "Everything okay, Dad?" I said, "Yeah, why?" He goes, "No, I just saw your face. It just seems like something's wrong." And I immediately knew. I was like, "Oh my god!" Like I'm supposed to be on vacation. I'm not supposed to be checking my phone. Emails and this and that. And now here I am doing all that, and now my son knows, and he's affected because he feels like he's taking away time from something I want to do. Man, I turned that shit off. I turned off my phone. And I said, "Nah, Papa, we're here to be vacationing," and I didn't look at it then, because at that time, again, they don't care. They don't care how you feel or what you're doing. Anything. They just expect you to meet whatever expectations they have, regardless of how you feel. And that was a moment where, again, I was in a high energy environment, suddenly became low energy, almost messed up, that portion of the day. But then I made a choice and I said, you know what, the way to solve this is by turning off my phone. And I ended up having a fantastic vacation with my youngest. It was just he and I, and we explored New York. We had a great time, got back to the office. And you know what was the craziest part, Wendy? He didn't even give a shit. He totally had forgotten that he sent me that text. He goes, "Oh yeah, yeah, no, no problem. I got the report that I needed." It was like this whole time I had fretted about that, and I let myself basically get manipulated into a low energy state. And why? It's because I felt like I needed to meet that level. I needed to make that. And why? Because I feel sometimes, and I'm sure you've been in that situation, and a lot of the folks that here are with us right now, like Ale, Cynthia, Susie, and Jessica. We feel like sometimes we're the only ones there, and we carry that burden of representation. We carry that really, it's an honor to be in spaces that it's only us, right? Like we got to carry that banner. But sometimes it's not fair, and especially when we have that low energy, when we don't have the time or the capacity to do it. At that point, that's when we got to really eject ourselves from that and say, like, you know what, I'm gonna have to focus on me today. I got to focus on me. And again, going back full circle, it doesn't matter what they expect from me. What matters is how I feel today, and what am I gonna do about that.
And I like that you didn't allow it to ruin your vacation. That's important. And you were able to still stay present with your son, but it does suck that you would still had the thought in your head as you were going through that process of being present. And I think that sometimes that's what makes us feel like we're letting people down, or we're not showing up, or whatever it is that is going through your mind, is you're really thinking about what the other person is expecting or what you think they're expecting. And then you, lo and behold, you go back to your office and you find that he forgot he even sent you the text. It's like, okay, well, did you did you not remember when I was on vacation before you sent it? But then two, when you did send it, like you made it sound kind of urgent. And it really wasn't, right? Obviously, if you forgot about it. So I could see how that whole thing would be frustrating for sure, as an example. And I feel like in my experience, I've had a few of those where people have changed my energy as I was going along with the process. And I think even in this entrepreneur journey, you can get wrapped up into the, especially on Clubhouse or other apps where you're listening to folks who are talking about their like step 500 and you're like on step 42. And you hear just these things, and if you absorb an unrealistic expectation for yourself, it can definitely change your energy and how you're going to progress into the next couple of steps. And I know that for me, I've listened to some of these rooms, and we talk about them sometimes as the bro advice rooms, where people are giving these really interesting business perspectives, and they're not always the right ones for me, but I'm there anyway, somehow listening to them. And when I walk away from those spaces, if I don't feel energized, I don't go back to them, because I know that it's not somewhere where I'm going to find value, or I'm going to be able to set my expectations for my business and for myself appropriately if I'm absorbing all these other things from all these other people. So I just want to welcome Jessica to the conversation. I know you have a bunch of stuff about this besides it being your Clubhouse anniversary. Welcome, welcome. And so we're talking about making progress on low energy days. So Rodrigo and I were just talking about the fact that there are low energy days and what those look like, but definitely ready to go into the conversation if you have suggestions about how you keep moving forward on those days when you're having them.
Yeah, so I'm like in low energy mode today actually. And I have like a lot of stuff that I need to get done. And I still find myself having to remind myself that it's okay for me not to push through. Um, I'm actually like just trying to do like one tiny project at a time. So like for me, it was like cleaning my bathroom because I want to take a nice bath tonight when the girls are asleep. So that way, when I wake up in the morning, I'm like rested. And I think sometimes it's just like for me, it's taking a day to myself to just really like accomplish the small, like tiny tasks that I've needed to get done, and like close out any like things that I've needed to close out. But I think the biggest thing for me is just really like listening to my body and not being so hard on myself when I'm not showing up as my super energetic self. Um, so yeah, today is definitely one of those days. I kind of just rested in the morning. I've been resting these last couple of days, to be completely honest, because I've been tired. But yeah, I sometimes still, Wendy, I still have to remind myself, even though, like the lifestyle I lead, like there are days where I still have to be like, oh, I don't need to be so productive today. And I think that for me, that's, it still comes in the form of like, we live in a very like production based world. So I'm like, damn, I didn't do anything today. And sometimes not doing anything is super productive, because then I can show up the next day and be like fully present, as opposed to just like not being fully present and not putting my whole heart. And I think that that's something that I really had to make peace with, is like, if I'm not going to put my whole heart into it at that moment, because I'm not fully rested or I have like a bunch of stuff going on, that I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, I completely agree. That with taking the time to do other things that need to be done, I think that that creates space for you to then be productive when you've taken care of all the little loose ends and tasks and like open loops that you're worried about. I know this morning I folded about five, four or five loads of laundry. Just folded everything and put it all away finally. And it was just a nightmare. And I was going, why do I do this to myself? But I realized the time it took for me to do that and to clear out, a couple things in my kitchen, even though that was during my quote unquote work day and I wasn't being quote unquote productive, it allowed me to not feel anxiety when I sat down that there was something I hadn't done. And even though I was thinking, oh, this is like such a bummer task, it's definitely a low energy task when you're folding clothes. Even if you're using the condo method, it's still low energy. Don't argue about that. But I thought, okay, if I'm doing this now, I have so many other hours of the day that I can do other things that I'm enjoying or do the work that I'm worried about. And I caught myself just yesterday thinking, oh, you didn't finish all of the things that you had set out to do yesterday, which was create like 4 or 5 blog posts. Was it probably an unrealistic standard for myself? Yes, absolutely. Did I get at least 2 blog posts mostly done and now I'm finalizing them? Yes. But also a bunch of other things came up at the same time that I had to attend to. So I didn't get more than 2 really to the point that I wanted them to be at. And I told myself, okay, I wasn't productive today. And then I thought about it at the end of the day and I went, wait a second, I did this and this and this and this. And I was productive because I not only got all those things done, I also then got almost 2 full blog posts done. And I had to reframe how I thought about it because I was trying to belittle my actions. And rather than focusing on, I did what I had the energy available to do yesterday. I was focused on the unrealistic expectation that I had set out for myself at 7 a.m. yesterday that didn't account for all of the other things that would happen yesterday. So I just wanted to welcome also Santiago and Susie to the stage. Welcome to the conversation. We're talking about making progress on low energy days, and we were just discussing what low energy days look like for us, for each of us, and when we've had them recently, what we've been able to do to get out of that. And so happy to hear what your tips are for progressing on low energy days. So I'm going to go to Susie first, Santi, so you get a chance to kind of join the conversation, and then hop in as soon as she's done. So Susie, how are you? I know you've been listening. What are your thoughts?
Hey, good morning. Or no, good afternoon. It's probably morning in Hawaii. So anyone in Hawaii, good morning. I'm on the west. God, I don't even know where I am. I'm sorry, you guys. Clearly I have a low energy morning today or a good low energy day today. So yeah, it's actually good afternoon where I am. I'm in Durham, North Carolina. And I love the conversation because I do think that in our society, we've basically self-flagellate ourselves with comparisons about whether we're quote being productive or not, and I'm certainly privy to that too. And it's definitely something that I have really worked on really within the last couple months too, because I started my own business and I was really feeling like I need to be working more, but I was also scared to do that because I know I can accomplish a lot if I just work my ass off, but it's always at the expense of my health and my well-being. So I didn't know how it would look to be able to balance that out, because I could just sit here in front of my computer and work 8 or 10 hours because I like it and because I'm engaged, but then it's really stressful. I don't go to the bathroom. I'll be in the pajamas all day. I forget to drink water. My back starts to hurt. So I can get a lot done, but it is not really productive for the rest of me. And really, when I started to really see that, I really shifted my definition of productivity, that I really look at my whole life and I look at my body, and that really the number one thing is my body. Um, People burn themselves out because they're not taking care of or even listening to their bodies to, I actually might need to go to the bathroom instead of holding it for another hour just because I'm on a mental roll. And the more I pay attention to my body and what it actually needs, it actually helps me be more mentally productive for work too, because then I'm actually creating natural breaks based on what my body wants. If my body needs to go outside and get a little bit of sunshine, if my body needs to like have some water, just stand up because I'm feeling my neck stiff. Basically, the more I pay attention to my body, the more I'm actually doing the things that create full life productivity, not just work productivity. And I've really just been thinking of changing the term productive so that it's not about like, oh, did I accomplish this task, that task, and now I can say yay. But really, I try to think of I try to think of rest as a productive thing. If anybody who has ever done weights, you know that when you go do weights, you're tearing up the fibers in your muscles, and that's not the part that makes you strong. The part that makes you strong is resting after, eating protein, taking care of it. It's actually the rest that creates the productivity, not the actual weights. So I just like to really think of the productiveness of rest and listening to my body as something that's really empowering. So I define productivity very differently now. Now it's not just like, what are the things that I got on my to-do list, but did I actually listen to myself? Did I actually take care of my body? Did I feel like I'm listening to myself emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, in all those other ways. So I just wanted to offer that because it's definitely something that I've been working through myself. And I really like where I'm arriving with my own understanding of what it means to be productive. So my name's Susie and I'm done speaking.
Thank you for sharing that, Susie. And just to add, to you just made me reminded me of a quote that now that you were talking about like fitness and how the muscles actually created during the rest. I remember I read an interview where somebody asked Muhammad Ali, "How many sit-ups can you do?" And I think he said something like 50, and they were like kind of surprised because you expect this world-class athlete to do more than 50 sit-ups, and he goes, 50 sit-ups, are you sure? He was like, yeah, because I only count after it starts hurting, because that's when the actual muscle's being built. So it's funny that you brought that up. So yeah, I mean, I would always say as well, I have my low energy days, sometimes days that I'm in a funk. I think it's in order for that to not spill into the next day, I think it's all right that we all need that one day to just kind of like say, accept it and say, you know what, it's all good. I know the type of person that I am, and it's very important that you also realize the type of person you are, that you'll recognize that and say, you know what, it's okay. We're all human beings, and as much as most of us here are entrepreneurs, that we don't have that 9 to 5, we don't have that set schedule. A lot of us are building our own thing. We're building our own dreams and all that good stuff. So we could we get burned out, and that's normal. I mean, we have crazy hours. Some of us don't have great sleeping patterns, unfortunately. Some of us are trying to balance family. I admire people like that. For example, one of the people I admire the most here on this app is Jessica. Why? Because Jessica, she's always, whenever you hear a room that she's doing that's providing so much value to women, who do you always hear in the background? Her children. And I would probably be very, very nervous and skeptical of listening to anything Jessica has to say unless her daughters are in the background, because I know that that's just the type of person she is. And again, is it okay for her to have a low energy day because she's just balancing being a mother, an entrepreneur, a wife, a friend, because she's a great friend to everyone. But just again, being able to balance it, it's difficult. So yeah, it's okay to have those energy days, but you just quickly realize that tomorrow you'll rebound from it and you'll be right back to kicking butt. And I'm done speaking.
I definitely feel like I need rebound days sometimes. But I think it's interesting to know in entrepreneur land that there is no Monday through Friday really, because the weekends usually a lot of us still do some sort of work on the weekend or do something towards our business on the weekend. So I find when I find myself getting that feeling on Sunday, like, oh, my energy's so drained because tomorrow's Monday. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Yesterday was Monday. The day before that was Monday. Every day is Monday. You're like busting your butt all the time doing this stuff. So you need to rest, and it's not a bummer or a low energy sort of feeling. It should be restful and restorative, and you should feel better after the rest. And so I appreciate the permission, Santi, to be like, no, no, no. I'm definitely resting today, and it's absolutely okay. And then I need this to restore myself for tomorrow. Have you ever had an idea that you thought was too big, or something that you just weren't sure you were going to be able to do? Maybe your idea seems like it's not that important right now, you don't want to pursue it, or you just don't have time. A lot of the things that we have as barriers in our brain are the things holding us back from making big ideas happen. I'm Wendy V, and I have an accelerator for you. The Idea to Action Accelerator is guaranteed to level up your impact instantly. I teach you how to go from 0 to 60 in just 5 days. We go over mindset barriers, all of the things that are holding you back from funneling your ideas into action. We are going to spend 5 days working on your biggest ideas. We'll prioritize, we'll plan, and we'll make sure that you have the tools you need to be successful at launching your idea into the world. Whether that's a service, product, program, nonprofit, or business, it does not matter. This process works for all of those things. I hope you'll join me for this live 5-day accelerator. Can't wait to share this process with you. To get into the next accelerator, you need to go over to my website, join my email list, and also you can register directly on my website via the show notes, and you will be in the next accelerator cohort. Can't wait to see you there. We want to make sure that your big ideas happen, and they happen soon.
Hey, this is Susie. So I just realized I don't know that I really answered your question, because part of the thing is I was thinking about productivity, I think because somebody else had been talking about productivity. And I don't know that I answered the question very directly, except really to just say that I pretty much honor my energy wherever it's at. And 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 I think that was really kind of my point, is that um you're supposed to be tired sometimes if things are, if you had a lot of things going on that are actually physically draining. Sometimes there's emotional things that happen. I feel like I've gotten really good at not ever judging myself if I'm not feeling um the same way every day. And I think that's really kind of the biggest thing that I would say, is that I used to just ignore my body and my feelings and my emotions to work like a machine, because I had to. I was telling myself I had to. And I think that once I stopped doing that, I began to really love and embrace the fact that I have different energy, different days. Sometimes it could just be whatever's happening in my body. I know that I had a very draining long weekend going to a retreat this weekend that is still, my body's still integrating it, my brain is still integrating it. And I just love that I no longer beat the crap out of myself and talk about it as if it's a problem. It's like it's just part of who I am. And I just want to offer that too, that it's like it's so nice not to beat myself up, because some days I don't have the same energy as other days. So I wanted to just make sure I touched on the main question you were asking, because I sort of answered more generally. Like I think of productivity in a different way now, and I realized that I didn't really tie that back to how do I perceive low energy days. And it's like I don't care that they're low energy. I'm just going to listen to myself. And I really, you know what I mean? Like it's not a low energy day. It's the energy I have today. So I just wanted to bring that up, and thanks for letting me amplify my answer from before. I'm Susie and I'm done speaking.
Absolutely. That was a great ad. I know that Jessica talks a lot about embodiment too, and I've had to learn what that means and to learn what your body is telling you and how you listen to it. And even sometimes I go back and think about all of the times that my body was telling me something and I wasn't listening to it. It's like, ooh, that was a really big warning sign. Why did I not pay attention to that? And so now I have at least some knowledge of what my body does when it doesn't like something I'm doing. And when it likes something I'm doing, I know a little bit better how to keep going with that. So I think it's really important to really understand what's going on inside and how that maps back to what you're thinking and what you're actually doing. And it's a very complex sort of skill set if you haven't been used to doing that before. And I very much was not. And by the time, in my 40s that I've gotten to this, I'm thinking, well, darn if this probably wouldn't have been helpful 10, 15 years ago as a younger worker in the workplace, really understanding the physiological aspects of what was going on with me. So I appreciate that share. So welcome, Monse, to the conversation. We're talking about how you continue to make progress on low energy days, and just wanted to hear what you have to share.
Hi, Wendy. Oh, okay. I got this because I've been reflecting more about this just because my field is very socially draining. It is. So just some background. So I'm currently a middle school counselor. And so with that, I have a caseload about was it 350 kids, just to give you an idea. So I'm the problem solver for these kids, right? Essentially. So I'm like, how can I solve someone else's problems when I'm like still figuring out for myself? So I feel like I'm in this weird sort of time in my life where I'm figuring out how to kind of function on those low energy days. Because I used to give myself everything to these kids, and I'm just like, where's that energy left for myself? But I thought I was being productive because I'm executing my job well, but it goes beyond that. I'm beyond my job title. And I'm like, I can't get too passionate about what I'm doing if I'm not passionate about myself first, you know? So I've kind of been really sitting back and kind of just trying out different things. I'm not gonna lie to you. So like on low energy days, I used to be like, I have to complete all these tasks. But now I'm just like, okay, let me sit down, slow down my thoughts, because I'm always running at like a million miles. Because in my head, productivity is getting something done. And getting something done now, I'm like, okay, I could just sit down and I'm getting something done. I'm filling up my cup. I'm doing what I got to in order to kind of preserve my energy, because it's almost like I could take a nap and then keep going, but I'm going to eventually crash. And then I heard earlier someone make the comparison of like when you like lift. I'm a lifter. Oh my gosh. Like, well, not as often anymore just because my schedule changes per time to time, and I'm just like, I really got to give myself that rest because that's where I see the most growth in myself. So to kind of bring it back to the low energy days, I'm still trying to really figure that out. I'm only 24. I feel like I'm still doing a lot of trial and error, so it's really good to hear everyone's feedback. Like when you said you wish you had these tools like 10, 15 years ago, I'm like, I'm somewhere in that bracket, still kind of picking up the tools I need to equip myself. Like I could have the tools, but how am I going to use them to build that house? How am I going to use it to build that like safe heaven for me to like reserve my energy on those low days? Yeah, that was a lot. That was a lot. It's a lot because I'm telling you, I'm still sitting with this, but those are kind of my thoughts with it.
I love that you just shared, even that you're in the middle of that progression of thinking about, well, how do I do this? And that you're working on it at 24. If I had that level of awareness of my life at 24, I think definitely I would be on a even better path than I already am on. But I appreciate you so much, Monse. So I'm going to turn to Rodrigo and say, Rodrigo, is there anything you want to share? I know you wanted to respond to a couple of things, probably.
I think that's the whole point of having these rooms, right? To to spread that generational wisdom, if you will, so that like the next group of folks that follow us and do the work that still needs to be done have better tools and resources. Whenever I talk to my kids, right, my two boys, I'm always trying to help them understand that they don't have to be on all the time either. And I think it's really important for them to recognize that and not feel bad when they don't feel on. I know my oldest, he has that issue, and he'll tell me like, oh, I gotta do this and I gotta do that and I gotta, and he's working on it. And my youngest, I'm very proud of him. He really has a very keen sense of himself, and he recognizes when he's not feeling it, and I appreciate that because, like Monte was saying, and like I would say, yeah, if I was young and I was kind of going through what I was going through, had I known that I didn't have to burden myself with certain things, had I known that what, not everybody's problem is my problem. In fact, everybody's problem is not my problem. The only problem that I really need to resolve are the ones that are affecting me. I think it would have been a great way to kind of get away from some of the issues that I felt I was confronting, back in the day. So I think it is important for us to really share that wisdom, share that knowledge in our experience. Whether especially when it comes to failures. I mean, a lot of times we want to talk about our triumphs, but it's really the failures that kind of mold us and grow us, and it's important to share that because at the end of the day, we don't want other folks to go through those same traps, same trials, and have to persevere through something that somebody already has.
Oh, I had super fails in this department. I definitely did. I know that there were times when I would wake up in the last couple of years that I was in the government, and I knew I had just an insane number of sick days. I mean, and you would never see them. They just go away when you leave or whatever, you retire. They eventually turn into money, but usually you just don't see them, right? Unless you come back into the government and use them. So I knew if I was leaving the government, I would never see these sick days. And I would wake up with such low energy that I was like, no, I'm taking a mental health day and I'm not going in today. And then I had to catch myself and say, wait a second. The whole purpose of doing the work that you do is because you find it fulfilling and you enjoy helping people. And if you have such low energy every day that you're trying to go and help people, there's something wrong with this equation. There is definitely not, this is not the way to do this. And that was one of the reasons why I chose to create the business that I chose, is because I wanted to still help people. I didn't want to sacrifice my mission to help people just because they didn't work for the government anymore. But I also didn't want to feel this immense pressure to come to a place that my energy was so zapped before I got there that I didn't feel like I was being effective at really actually helping people. And I think that through the mechanisms that I've been able to develop with my business, I can see a more closer and direct benefit of my energy in the success of other people. And that also then gives me more energy to keep going every single day. So when I flipped that equation backwards from, well, what is the root of, like Rodrigo started this conversation, what is the root of this low energy? And was able to then say, aha, there's part of this equation that doesn't make sense. And when I eliminate that part of the equation, I'm better off. And I notice that it's not just my energy that's going out, but also the energy going in. And it's much more balanced. And I think that that has been one of the primary reasons why I haven't reconsidered going back to the government since I started my business, because then I would be right back in step one with that same feeling of not wanting to go to work because I had whatever going along with it.
Hey, Wendy, I have a question for you.
Sure.
And Rodrigo. Yeah, I mean, as I'm listening to you guys, and I think also when Montserrat was saying her thing, I realized that, and and something also Santiago said
My
is
friend, the one
is
that
kind of
we
like,
lived with, she got
oh, it's it is really different for those of us who have decided we don't want to work for the man, because it is, and we want to work for ourselves. And it is a little easier, say for me, to balance my energies and my family and my stuff, because now I'm just reporting to me. Although I will say that when I first started doing that, I used to think, oh, I'm going to love my boss, me, because I used to hate my other boss. But then it turned out I was saying the same stuff to myself as my own boss that my boss used to say to me. And I was beating myself up and I was working too hard. And now I've kind of come to this place where I love my boss again. But it's interesting because those of us who work for ourselves can do that. And I was thinking about the challenges of when you do work for somebody else, and I mean, I just remember what you were saying before, Wendy, about feeling like, because you were the only person of color, and feeling like there was some expectation that you had to keep going at a higher level, even if you weren't feeling it. I guess I just wanted to throw in that observation that it could be a little bit different for those of us who then have our own businesses. We could still run into that issue where our internal boss is a taskmaster, and we could learn to take care of ourselves and be kind to ourselves. But it is a different challenge when maybe you are being actually observed by other people who may have a real expectation of how you show up. So I just want to throw that out there for people, that if you see that there is a difference in that, or not.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why I wholeheartedly encourage folks to yes, pick your position, but also pick your boss. A lot of times when it comes to leadership, it's really it's really incumbent on how your boss treats you as opposed to how the job treats you, right? I mean, there's like very well known numbers where people don't leave the job, they leave their boss, right? And so I've always encouraged folks to do that, to make sure that they have a boss that recognizes that. I'm proud to say that I felt like I was a good boss. I remember there were times when some of my team members, showed up and weren't feeling it, and I sent some home. I said, take the rest of the day off. It's like, oh well, no, I gotta do that. I go, man, just take the rest of the day off. The work's gonna be there, blah blah blah. And they would appreciate that, And I know that I had a boss that was like that too, that would just allow me to just take the day off or do whatever I got to do to take care of that, because they recognize, like, you know what, you're having an off day. And sometimes because of that same mentality that I have, that I just still want to show up on a day that I don't have it. My boss recognizes that, and he's like, yo, go home, go home. What? Yeah, man, you don't, what's wrong? Blah blah blah. Da, da, da. Oh, da, da, da. Nah, just go home. Just go home. And I think again, that's why it's important that when we place ourselves as leaders, that we really do model the behavior that we want, us to be treated. So if we are in a position where we are bosses, where we are part of the leadership team, that we take into account that our workforce is composed of human beings, people, human beings who are emotional, who are having lives, are doing things outside of work. And for us to have that expectation for them to perform regardless of what's going outside, I think is a very poor expectation. People have said that before. I've walked into environments where people say, "Hey, you leave home at the door. Once you come in, to work." We're not fucking Terminators. We're not machines that are just with red eyes, with protocols ready to. No, no. We definitely have lives. We have family. We have things going on that definitely will affect us. And so I think it is critical that we have bosses, that leadership, and that we are the lead when we are the leaders, that we recognize when folks have low energy or not up to it, or maybe are not bringing in the 100% that we would like for them to bring, and be okay with that. Be okay with saying like, hey, you know what, it's okay, take the day off, or you know what, maybe not expecting them to complete every single assignment, whatever the capacity is that you have, to go ahead and allow them that grace. Because I promise you, from my experience when I was a leader, man, they would repay that tenfold. And of course, I don't do that for the reciprocation, but they just felt like, hey, you know what, man? He recognized that. Let me go ahead and pay him back with this XYZ, work on a weekend, come through when I needed somebody on overtime, blah, 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 whatever the case may be. And I think that's why it is incumbent on us that if we want others to recognize when we have low energy days, we also have to recognize when others have low energy days.
Oh, I definitely would do that as a boss too. I feel like there was a lot of times when my work environment, not my workers, our work environment was too stressful for people, and I was feeling it and shielding a lot of people at the same time as there was pressure coming from those people for me to inform them and to help appease their worries. And a lot of the time, the leadership team, my peers, were not concerned with workers as people, but more so as, well, what have they gotten done? What has been done? What's being done towards the mission? What needs to be done? And it was definitely about the productivity. It wasn't always about, well, are people at the capacity to do these things or to achieve these things that we're expecting? And when we expect things unrealistically, what does it do to the mental state of these people that we're asking continually to pump out at like 130%? It's just not feasible. It's not possible. And it's really bad leadership practice to expect that. But yet, that was the environment that we were continually operating in. So I always felt like it was my role as a leader to, as much as possible, create more favorable conditions for my team, because they were going to step up and be there for me when I needed them to do a project, or I knew that I would have to ask them to do something uncomfortable eventually, and that would be a lot easier if, in some level, I've been able to make the environment more comfortable for them as we're going through our work and as there were other challenges that were popping up. So I definitely agree. You don't always have the ability to manage that for yourself as an entrepreneur, but when you are leading a team of other people, it's kind of twofold situation. You're trying to manage whatever the expectation is for yourself, but then you're also trying to make sure that people can be optimal in their performance and that you're not creating any barriers or any reason why they're not performing as much as possible, but at a realistic expectation, not at 130%.
I'll also add this, Wendy. When I've worked with my clients, it's only happened once, but I do remember with one couple. It was with my co-parenting consultancy, where the guy was just out of it. Something was bothering him. We were supposed to talk about weekend visitations, and we're on a Zoom call. And I did. I asked the lady. I said, "Can you give me 5 minutes? I want to talk to XYZ." And when I turned, I did the Zoom little thing, whatever, and I was talking to him, and I said, "What's up, man? What's everything okay?" He's like, "No, no, yeah, everything's cool." I said, "Look, man, I just want to make sure that everything's good. If we got to, reschedule this, let me know." And the thing he was worried about was because I have a very firm We set the schedule up. That's the day. No reschedules or anything like that. But that's just to avoid, folks kind of abusing my time, right? And so when I told him, I said, hey, look, if we got to reschedule when you're in a better state, I'm cool with it, man. I'm not gonna recharge y'all. I'm not gonna, charge y'all again or charge a fee or anything like that. And he's like, you sure? I was like, yeah, yeah. Nah, man. And he started explaining a whole bunch of stuff that was going on at work and with his current girlfriend. And I told him, I said, yeah, man, you got too much going on, man. Why don't we just table this till next week? And we did. And we had a fantastic session the next time. And he came in very positive, and she did as well. And we had a great session. And we followed it up with a couple more times. My whole point with that is that, when we recognize others, even as an entrepreneur, if we have a consultancy, if we have a coaching, and we have something like that, I think when it comes to our clients, we can also show grace. We can still model the behavior that we would expect, and that we would want, and tell them, hey, it's okay if today's an off day. Let's reschedule, or let's do this, or let's do that, whatever capacity you have, right, to allow that. Because the one thing that I do try to instill with my clients is kind of a transparency and an honesty. And if I'm having a rough day, obviously I can just write an email and tell them, hey, we're going to reschedule. I kind of got something that came up, right? Not the best practices, but it does happen, right? But if I'm transparent and honest with them, and I want them to, I'm sorry, if I want them to be transparent and honest with me, I have to be the same way as well. And so when I have communicated with some of my clients, I do tell them, like, hey, you know what, doing this and what, why don't we reschedule for XYZ? And it works out at the end of the day, because at the end of the day, I've established the expectations for them and say, hey, this is a space where we're going to communicate honestly and transparently. And if we don't have that day, no problem. Let's reschedule it.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Social Impact Level Up podcast. From me, Wendy V, and my co-host Rodrigo Bravo, we sincerely appreciate your follows, your likes, your subscribes, and your shares. Make sure that you're reaching out to us on social media. We'd love to hear from you. Have a wonderful day, and remember, keep changing the world.